Our first guest of the morning, joining us from Capitol Hill, Representative Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, a member of the Oversight and Accountability Committee, also a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Representative Burchett, good morning.
Thanks for having me on, brother.
You attended a meeting with Elon Musk yesterday over activities of Doge. What did you walk away from that meeting learning?
Well, just how broad and deep the corruption and the misuse of public funds is, and it just keeps getting deeper, and they haven't even really scratched the surface because when they start looking at education and the Pentagon, I suspect it'll go much deeper.
When you talk, if he says the things that Doge has found and the savings they found, how do you verify that other than the fact that it's the word of Elon Musk?
They document it. There is a paper trail and a computer. It's computer generated. I have a 17-year-old daughter that shows me how stupid I am with my computer every day. But he had another gentleman there with him who verified and everything that he said, and it allowed us. I'm in the Marjorie Taylor Greene, appointed me to her committee on the Doge subcommittee, and we are actually delving into all that, and I don't want to disclose too much of it because that means that most of the time that those folks will try to close up that paper trail. But it's very well documented, and I'm very confident in what's going on. You know, when he started laying out the numbers of people in their over 100 years old that were getting benefits, and I think he said the oldest verified American was 114, and there was actually some that were even older than our country. And you have to wonder, is that just a computer glitch? But then when you were seeing checks go overseas that have been documented, why is somebody receiving benefits from America that lives in Peru, for instance, was one of the examples given. So there's quite a lot there. And I think my biggest fear is that we can stay focused. There's just so much corruption and it goes so deep. And furthermore, my fear is, as in my discussions with President Trump yesterday, is that I like to call them the war pimps, because every dollar we save, they're wanting to soak it up at the Pentagon with some new weapons defense system and a lot of these things, as soon as they come off the production line, are mothballed. But the reason they stay in, we keep funding them, is because they're in powerful legislators' district. And those things were discussed. And I felt like the more they're discussed and open, the more alert the American public will be, and they will start contacting their legislators and say enough is enough with this.
On the Senate side, there's talk from senators to use a rescission process to formalize these cuts into legislative efforts. Do you support that, and should that be the role of Congress more than Elon Musk at this stage?
I think so. Rand Paul is spearheading that, and he's a very good friend, and I wholeheartedly support any rescinding of funds that I think have been misappropriated, but you've got to remember that it's very broad, and you can go into every department almost and find that. Case in point, the absent or the unused buildings that the federal government owns or that is renting, and I suspect that paper trail will lead back to some very influential people and some folks that have maybe even some members of Congress. And that's one thing else I suggested to Elon. I said, there's 435 members of Congress. I think you ought to investigate every dadgum one of them and see if they're getting some money that is possibly ill-gotten gains. And as I said that, I heard a loud noise behind me. I didn't know if somebody was taking a shot at me or not.
Can you elaborate on that? Why would you investigate members of Congress on the topic of ill-gotten gains?
Because there's no other reason for them to keep voting for garbage other than they might have a wife and or girlfriend that works for one of these departments or works for one of these quasi-governmental agencies. And I think until we do that, America will not trust Congress, and they shouldn't. But why wouldn't you? Why would you not want to discuss that? And that's why, I've filed legislation along with AOC and others to eliminate individual stock trades by members of Congress. My buddy Tommy Siler handles my $12,000 or $13,000 mutual fund very well, and I think members of Congress ought to follow that lead instead of individual stock trades. Another case in point, when we gave Ukraine our missile defense system by presidential order, President Biden did that. We had to replenish our missile supply in this country, which we should. We could not be naked in defense of our country. And yet, who owns stock in those companies? Members of Congress, both parties. And when had they bought that stock? Some of them just a couple of weeks prior to that decision by the president. So those are the kind of things America needs to be paying attention to. And I think Elon Musk is going to bring those to light.
And before we take calls, there's an effort reportedly by House leadership to put a continuing resolution that will last throughout the end of the year. If that's the case, where are you on that?
Well, there's talk, is it clean? And then they start talking about how the Cardinals, which I do not like that term, members of Congress that are on the Appropriations Committee, they want to make some adjustments to it, and then for it is not clean. I think, why can't we go back to pre-COVID funding levels? No one has yet told me one dadgum government program that has been added since COVID that has made their lives better or that they could not live without. We ought to just go back to those levels, and then we could literally balance our budget.
Representative Tim Burchett with us until 8 o'clock. Our first call